This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Sean Preston.
Welcome to the Good Neighbor Podcast Expert Series, where we go beyond introductions and dive into real, practical expertise from trusted local professionals. This is episode 3, and today we're joined by one of Simcoe County's leading experts in maternal mental health and psychotherapy, Amber Sperling of Amber Sperling Social Work and Psychotherapy Services. In this episode, we're opening up the conversation around emotional wellness during one of life's biggest transitions, parenthood. Whether you're navigating the early days of postpartum, wrestling with burnout, or simply trying to reconnect with your own sense of self, Amber brings clarity, compassion, and concrete tools for thriving through it all. We're diving into her framework for well-being, discussing the emotional roller coaster of modern parenting, and unpacking what it really means to live authentically, even when life feels overwhelming. So let's get into it. Amber, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sean. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Super happy to have you. Before we start, why don't we do just a short little kind of introduction to our listeners? Tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I am a registered social worker, psychotherapist, and importantly, a mom. So I have 2 little girls, and I'm also the owner of a group psychotherapy practice where our goal is to ensure that no parent feels the loneliness, isolation of parenthood, as well as reducing that overwhelm. You said it quite well there, Sean. I feel like I'm repeating what you said, but we want to give parents the pen back to be the author of their story again, because a lot of us get lost in that transition into parenthood. So we offer individual psychotherapy, couples work. We do workshops and groups, as well as a lot of the community work that is important in feeling connected.
Amazing. Okay, so we're going to break this up into 4 segments. We'll go one at a time. You've written a lot of information. There's a lot of knowledge that's out there on your website in Midhurst Neighbors to really educate. The more people know, the better off they are. Knowledge is power, right? And so let's start with one of the articles that you wrote, which was about nurturing well-being for expected and new parents. So my first question for you is, the postpartum hormone shift is kind of described as the most intense kind of physiological changes, right, a human can go through, right? So what does that experience look like, and how does that impact mental health?
That's such a great question, and I'm glad you grabbed that from the article, because it is the greatest hormone change in a human lifespan, what happens to us postpartum. And so recognizing that hormones impact our mood and anxiety levels, hormones impact so much about how our bodies feel and how we feel in our bodies. So knowing that greatest shift that can happen to a human is also occurring at the same time you're transitioning into a completely different role. And I think that for me as a mental health practitioner, this is really important because we know that there's going to be mood struggles and there's going to be more anxiety and distress and discomfort that happens in that time right after giving birth, those few days there. And so we need to wrap around more. We need to recognize that beyond the it's normal, and this is one of the topics that comes up so commonly. It's not okay to just say it's normal. There needs to be a recognition that because it's normal, there is a deserving of extra support. So it's not just saying, oh, baby blues, you'll be fine. It's saying, wow, yes, what you're going through is really hard. And what can we do to support you? Like having meals prepared, having plans for sleep, having extra support available, because we know it's hard rather than just saying, yeah, that's normal.
Right. I'm just naturally curious. Obviously, being a man, it's different for me, but like, is this something that, women or people traditionally like know about, like the baby blues, as you kind of put it, or is it just kind of like, yeah, you're having a baby, you get all excited about it, you have the baby, and then we're just kind of unaware of that these are things that will physiologically actually happen in our body. And then now realizing, oh yeah, no, I got all this added responsibility. Now I got to take care of this baby. Oh, and then run the house, run the life. If you got more kids, it's even more complicated,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Is that like a common thing that people do know about? Obviously, we're trying to educate more people on it.
I mean, it is something that's out there. I would say baby blues is probably one of the things that we hear about. Like, oh, you know, you might struggle postpartum, or people call it, I have a little postpartum, where like if you've had a baby, you're postpartum. So, like baby blues, postpartum mood and anxiety disorders. So, people may be more aware of it. We hear it in like prenatal classes. I think what I really want people to know is that, and this is more for like our village, that even if you know, it doesn't mean you have control over it. And so it's more about recognizing that if you know, looking at the people around you that might be going through it, right? So like we need to take the burden off of the mother and the father because it's difficult for them too. We need to take the burden off of the new parents, um, and then to recognize that this is difficult, even if they know, right? Even if they're aware of it. So I would say like that short term period of like that hormone change, that is the time that people are more aware that they might be struggling, but it doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of like having control over it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I wasn't overly familiar with postpartum and what does that mean, and so I did a deep dive onto it, and I got into the weeds. Let's just say I'm a little
Love
bit
it.
of a queasy guy too, so that was a fun experience for me, but very informative, right? And even if somebody like, okay, you know about it, right? Maybe you've educated yourself on it. It's still very different from actually living through it when you go through the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so you introduced this model. It's called NEST, NESTS, nests. Can you walk us through that, and which piece do you find that like most parents tend to neglect out of that?
Good question. So NESTS is an acronym I can't take credit for. I learned it from Postpartum BC years ago, but I use it quite often in my practice. And so NESTS is an easy way of assessing how am I doing? Am I hitting the basic needs? So N stands for nutrition or nourishment. I'm shifting more to nourishment because how are you nourishing your body? Is your body getting what it needs? So that might be, have you eaten today? um, or what have you eaten today? How often? Um, how does your body feel? That could also incorporate hygiene. Like, when was the last time you showered? I know before I had kids, I wouldn't have even thought of these things. But after I had my first, I was like, wow, like without proper support, you can go days without showering, but not because you don't want to or because um, you don't think it's important. So, nourishment is like, how am I taking care of my body? Is my body getting what it needs? Exercise ties into that. So NE, the E is exercise or movement. Have you moved your body? And that might be something as simple as like, have you got up and walked around? Postpartum looks different for everybody in terms of healing. So also maybe asking if you have someone in your life that can support you in adding movement. So whether that's your physiotherapist, chiropractor, family practitioner. There's like in the Simcoe County area, there's so many amazing people that are trained in this area. So just, you know, have I incorporated movement and what's getting in the way? Do I need professional support? Um, S. So the first S I'm going to say is sleep. And that would be the hardest one. So we know that sleep deprivation is a form of torture and is used in wars. So recognizing that in the postpartum period, and not just postpartum period, but in that time frame where you now do not have control over when and how much you can sleep, we also find that sleep is not as deep because you are in a survival state of caring for an infant. So you're not getting that same deep sleep if you are sleeping. So recognizing, are you sleeping? And so I will encourage families to figure out a way to get at least at bare minimum a 4-hour stretch without interruption. Feeding does impact that, but that is part of the conversation, how baby's feeding, if baby's growing. But 4 to 6 hours minimum. I mean, ideally 6, but 4 uninterrupted. So I'm just going to continue through nests. So nourishment, exercise, sleep. T is time for self. And time for self is beyond self-care. This isn't like go get your nails done, although if that's what you do, amazing. Time for self means, have you had a period of time recently where you were not responsible for another living being? Have you been able to step aside and have your nervous system calm and not be on? Because when we have a baby, you're on, right? Like you're responsible. You have to care for them. They can't feed themselves, etc. So time for self is being able to step away and not being on. I will encourage new moms that hygiene does not count for that. Like having a bath or a shower doesn't count. Eating food that you haven't eaten all day doesn't count. I'll also often say, is it possible for you to leave the house by yourself or for your partner to take the baby out? Because if we can hear baby crying, our nervous system isn't having time for self.
Right.
So it's that like separation of like calming your nervous system. And then the last S is supports. And we talk about different types of supports. So traditionally, people are like, oh, yeah, I talk to my mom, or I have a best friend, or I talk to my partner. But it's beyond just talking about it. It's like, who's bringing meals? Do you have financial stability? Like, do you feel supported by your bank? Do you feel supported by your dentist? I don't know. Like, but looking outside the traditional box of who your supports are and what are the times where you feel where you can let your guard down, feel comfortable, and accessing the resources that you need. So we want to think about these things. You can do like a bullseye of supports. So who's in the middle? Maybe it's you and your partner and your baby, and then the next circle is your parents, your in-laws, and the next circle maybe your siblings. In your inner circle could be your best friend. There's no right or wrong, um, but recognizing that supports are beyond the people that are within your walls, and when you're aware of that, you're more likely to access them.
Yeah, it's a pretty dialed in approach, like a roadmap, right? For somebody to be able to follow and making sure that they're eating right, they're getting the proper amount of sleep, that they can kind of take a break. Like the nervous system is like a real thing. It's not talked about often enough, but being able to like let that rest and give that a break. It's like everything kind of functions as one. And if you have some of these things, put in place, that's really going to help kind of like that enjoyment of the experience. Like like you just had a baby, like this should be an enjoyable experience, and just making sure that we have these things in place is very positive, because like you were saying, right, all the hormonal changes, there's things that are kind of happening, and then making sure that the support system is there. I think that's crucial as well, to be able to take a little bit of a breather, focus on something for the mom themselves, and be able to take care of them. It's kind of like I look at it like the mask in the airplane. They say put your own mask on first before you put it on somebody else.
Absolutely. We use that analogy a lot, actually, because it's true, right? Like if you're not caring for yourself, you can't care for others.
100%. Okay, you highlight that even non-childbearing partners can struggle mentally as well, right, during this phase.
Mhm.
So, like, what does that often look like, and how do you support them?
Yeah, good question. So, um, we know that as high as 3 out of 5 birth givers, so mothers, is usually in our region. It's higher in our region than the provincial average. Struggle with mood and anxiety disorders, and we know that 50% of the partner that gave birth are likely to struggle as well, which translate to about 1 in 10. Those are the stats that are most recent, and so I often will educate my client because in 99% of the time it's a mom that's in front of me, and I will educate them that if you're struggling, that it is possible your partner is as well, and sometimes they will be sharing some frustrations or resentment that comes up in the home about their partner's behaviors or how they're communicating. And sometimes that's a bit of a yellow flag of, have you thought about maybe they're struggling as well? And just being really careful to not put that burden on the person in front of me. It's more around how can we provide support for them too? Like, can they come in with you? Not for couples therapy necessarily. It's more around like couples support, I like to call it. So we're wrapping around the family and like what would be helpful for both of them. Who can we bring in? Like, have you thought about getting a doula so you guys can sleep? Or is there a family member that could come in and sleep as well? Sometimes the partner takes time off work in addition to what they've been allotted. So just recognizing like sleep deprivation is not isolated. So if they're not sleeping, how can we help them sleep? Um, we also do see partners for sure because there's a lot of identity struggles that come with the transition to parenthood. And so, what does it mean being a parent? I also work with couples who have had a perinatal loss. So, if they've had a miscarriage or stillborn, and helping them to wrap their head around like, what does it mean for me being a parent now that I don't have a baby in the home? Um, so, just recognizing that a person's experience is right. It's true. I don't question it. If they're struggling, then we're here to support them. It's not around saying, well, you know, prove to me why, or you need to prove that you're not okay. It's we take that at face value.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes back to that support thing that you were talking about, just making sure that everybody feels supported so that things that need to happen can happen, whether that's something like sleep or finding time to eat, all obviously in the best interest for the baby. That baby needs to be taken care for as well. Do you find it like if the other partner decides that they do come in to sit in for some of these sessions, do you feel like that's like a pretty effective way to try to get it across? Because obviously then it's not telling like the telephone game. You're telling one person, they have to remember that information to then tell it to somebody else. And, they're both there kind of supporting each other. Do you feel like that's a pretty effective thing, or do you wish that maybe more people did that?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with that last part. I wish more people did that. I think it is effective, but more often than not, I'm relaying information. I find it's more effective providing resources. Like I might say, hey, maybe you guys could watch this short YouTube video clip together, or providing names of other therapists that could help the partner as well, like giving them their own team to support them.
Right.
Um, or resources, but yeah, I mean, we always try to have the partner involved in some capacity, but it's not often that they attend, I will say. Um, yeah, couples will more often, just from my experience, maybe do a couples session with a couples therapist. And we have two on our team for that reason, that we want to be able to make things easy to access. Um, but yeah, I wish I saw more partners come in, and maybe that's just something we need to do in terms of our intake process.
That's good information to know. For somebody who's new to therapy, right, who doesn't maybe know where to start, maybe they feel like their problems aren't big enough, like what would you want them to hear?
I would want them to know that everybody deserves support, and there's no such thing as needing it enough. That everybody is entitled to have someone to talk to without judgment, to feel safe, hopefully to feel safe, and to connect with themselves in a way that you can't s- around people that already know you and have preconceived notions. So I think with therapy, it really offers an opportunity to start fresh if that's what you want, and really like connect with the person you are, and where, and maybe redefining your path of where you're going. um, Therapy is intimidating to everybody. It's rare that I have someone come in and be like, I've never been in therapy before. I'm just going to like plop down on the couch and, you know, let everything out.
Right.
It's more often that they're like, I'm nervous. I don't know how this is going to go. I find that nervousness dissipates pretty quick because it's really about them. It's not about me. It's not what I want to know. It's what's important to them, and I really let them guide that. So whatever comes up for a person in therapy, that's where in my practice, that's where we go. So um the client is the boss in the relationship. The client is the one that is driving our goals, and it can be what you need it to be. So we have our offices. We do virtual. We also do walk and talk because for some people, just being in a space confined is really uncomfortable, especially if you're not used to um, like medical appointments. Not that we're medical, but it can feel that way.
Right.
So if it's more comfortable to go for a walk, for example, we offer that as well.
Beautiful. And you're now moving on to our second segment. You wrote a beautiful piece titled You Deserve to Thrive: Why Prioritizing Your Mental Health Empowers You, Your Family, and Your Community. Now, going through that article, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, you write that when a mother thrives, her family thrives. What does that actually look like in a home, and how do you help clients get there?
Well, it looks like someone that is living their life without or with minimal resentment, having the tools and the confidence to communicate, recognizing that they have worth and value internally. So that means, I don't want to like create stereotypes, but maybe the mother is working because she wants to work. We have a higher age bracket of women having babies now. I think for the first time in, I don't know about history, but in decades at least, there's more women in their 30s and 40s having babies than teenagers, which is a huge accomplishment. And so for a lot of us, we've had careers before having children. So it's very different than decades ago. And
Right.
so I think when a mother is thriving, she has her own identity. Mother is part of it. It's a big part and a part, I'm very grateful for, but it's not the whole part. And recognizing that in a family, I think is important. Um, and so that can mean having some control. You're never going to have all, but some control over time. What does that look like? Having support to pursue interests. We want our kids to know that we're people too, right? So that they're like, oh, when someone says, oh, what? Tell me about your mom. They're not just saying, well, she makes my food. My mom loves to swim, or my mom, works as whatever, right? Um, and so also demonstrating what self care really is and finding times of connection and caring for yourself with supports, like not in isolation. um, so I think it's important to encourage, well, all people, I'm going to say all people, not just parents, but encourage parents to recognize, what do you think your kids see? Like, hold up that mirror. What do they see in you? And does that like accurately represent your values and who you think you are or want to be? Because that can be a really great way of recognizing what your needs are.
Yeah, that might prompt somebody to say, like, wow, used to play the guitar all the time. Like, I'm not downstairs in my studio, strumming away or writing songs. Could be reading books, or I haven't just lounged in my backyard and smelling the fresh cut grass in a while. I used to do that all the time. That's a really good way of being able to put that, because it just reframes the mind to look through a bit of a different lens for somebody to actually kind of pick that up and say, oh no, yeah, I've been missing something I've been really enjoying for a while. I'm not doing that yet. And once you start doing it and getting back to really kind of feeling like you, then correct me if I'm wrong, that's kind of where the identity starts to come back.
Yeah, for sure. And then you're feeling more grounded and bringing in the nervous system. Then your nervous system is calmer, right? Because it's
Right.
feeling more in line. Um, It's not always like feeling on edge of like, what's coming next? Who am I? Like, how do I fit in this situation? It's like, no, I feel really connected to who I am and the people around you too, right? Like you're going to have much healthier, stronger relationships with your partner and your family and your friends, etc., if you feel more connected to who you are. There's much less loneliness.
Totally. Totally. Well, I love this next one because I'm a bit of a movie fan. Love Pixar movies and Disney movies. So you referenced the Pixar movie Inside Out. For those who haven't watched it, please go ahead and watch it. How do you use that emotional framework to help clients make peace with all parts of themselves?
I think Disney did such a great job in this movie because we all have parts. And whether or not you've studied internal family systems or one of the other like therapeutic modalities that uses parts work, um, I think everybody can recognize like there's a part of me that feels this way. Like it's not all of me. And so with clients, I think hearing, it sounds like a part of you feels this way, but not all of you is really affirming because we carry guilt and shame for our emotions, but our emotions have a place. They're welcome. They're trying to tell us something, right? And so we don't want to ignore them. But when you recognize that they're not your whole story, they're a part of your story, it takes that burden off of feeling ashamed for how you feel. So, for example, this has come up a few times this week with clients where they share that they feel like they're not loving everything about motherhood, right? And then they're feeling guilty. Like, I don't hate being a mom, but I don't love everything. And like, how do I wrap my head around that? So then we talk about, well, there's a part of you that is feeling disconnected in motherhood, or there's a part of you that doesn't love being on mat leave and being away from your friends and colleagues, or there's a part of you that um, is exhausted and isn't sure how much longer you can not be sleeping. And that's okay. Like those parts are welcome. But I'm also hearing there's a part of you that loves being a mom. And there's a part of you that is really excited to see your baby grow or like to see what they're going to do tomorrow. There's a part of you that's really um, feeling connected to this nurturing part of you that's showing up. So um, I think breaking it apart can be really powerful. And not just in motherhood, like for anybody, right? Like, you have an event coming up and you're like, ugh, I don't really want to go. And it's like, well, a part of me is really nervous about, meeting new people. Well, there's other parts of me that's also really excited about opportunities that could come out of it. So when we break it apart, it feels less heavy. And
Happens all the time. Every time I want to go to a networking event, I'm driving there going like, man, that new TV series I'm watching is looking real good right about now. Till I start networking, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm having a great time meeting all kinds of new people. And yeah, there's always a little something that might be in your back of your mind that might pull you in a different way. But then you finish, and I'm like, man, I love going to these. I always want to keep going to these, and it's
yeah,
exactly what you're saying, right?
yeah, you almost have that like image in your head of like joy and anxiety fighting over the board, the master board there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You mentioned in this article the authentic self, right? Disconnection that happens from the authentic self. That's what the theme is here. How can somebody tell if they've lost that connection, and what would be the first step towards finding that again?
Mm. Most often I hear people say, I just don't feel right. Like I can't describe what it is. I just don't feel like myself. That might be like you try and do something that you used to enjoy and it's just not hitting the spot. Or even being around people that you used to be around and just feeling disconnected. Like it's work to do things that used to be fun and easy.
Mhm.
I mean, there can be other things happening there. So just caution if you are noticing that. It helps to talk to someone to tease it apart. Um, but it might be something like maybe all your old friends, none of them have kids. And now you are, parents of a newborn and When you hear them complaining about like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to get up at 10 a.m. on Saturday. There's a disconnect there. And it's not judgment saying like there's something wrong with your friends. They're entitled to feel that way. And also, like, there's bigger things going on in your life. So that's pretty common. So, what is your new authentic self? Well, part of that is being a parent, but what are the values that come with that? Um, and giving yourself permission to grieve the life that you had or let go of some things. Um, that can be really empowering. So that disconnect can often show up as like maybe some signs of depression, um, like apathy, just lack of interest, avoidance, um, loneliness. Yeah. So it just like really not feeling good, not feeling like yourself.
You mentioned journaling, and curiosity is the first steps before therapy. How do those practices help someone begin healing? You're in that looking to be in that healing process.
Mm. Journaling is so powerful. And if you're not a person that enjoys pen to paper, that's okay. Some people type it, some people voice note. Um, Journaling allows us to process information. So there is some scientific evidence around like pen to paper writing helps our brain to process. And so it is a form of problem solving, like a unconscious problem solving sometimes, but it's also recognizing that we don't have to hold everything in our brain. Sometimes our worries are completely out of our control, or not very likely to happen, or maybe they're based on a past experience that doesn't apply in the present. So, journaling can take the information out of your head and put it on paper, and then like allowing yourself to not carry it anymore because it's been written down. Um, some people can do that without even writing it, which is great as well. There's methods we use to help with that. Um, and curiosity is such a powerful emotion. I think it's one of our most powerful emotions because when we show up with curiosity, it reduces the burden of judgment and allows us to feel free to let information come and go from our brains. It also can avoid conflict for ourselves and with others. So if you're curious, um, it allows people to explain and to open up for more information. So, for example, um, like if your partner is doing something that's really annoying you, and if you're curious and say, "Oh, I've noticed that recently you've been doing X more often," or like, "I noticed lately you're playing more video games." I don't know, and they're able to say, "Yeah, you seem really busy with the baby. I'm trying to stay out of your way." Like that's a lot different than I can't stand that you're not doing anything,
Yeah.
or other things that can come up, right? So, like, I'm just curious, like, I've noticed this is happening. It can avoid conflict for sure. And it changes how we interact with the world. It just opens it up to possibility.
Yeah, the more information that you know, the better you're able to make decisions. Life's all about making choices, making decisions. So if you're arming yourself with more knowledge, it's just going to help through that process.
Yeah. Yeah. And in this transition to parenthood that we're talking about, you meet so many new people, right? And so having curiosity about those other people also allows you to kind of figure out, like, who am I in this phase? Like, more about your identity as well. Who am I drawn to? Um, what's coming up for me in these different events and interactions? Just without having to label it, just being curious and noticing what comes up.
I'm going to segue in here because we're still talking about healing. And so you talk about healing ripples into families and communities. Can you share like what that transformation looks like when someone begins prioritizing their mental health?
Um, I see quite often, when there is that healing that is happening, um, people tend to be more assertive. It doesn't take as much courage to speak up, and set the tone for relationships. It's interesting because I will often say, if they're not in the room with us, then we can't change them. However, what we also know is that when we set boundaries and are more assertive, and that healing has happened, we're having more rational, adaptive scripts in our brains. So instead of like, I am a burden, I am worthwhile and deserve to be listened to or heard. When you show up in relationships, there's more respect that shows up. Families either have clearer communication, or you just recognize who isn't your people, right? Like letting go, and grieving relationships that um, aren't what you want them to be, which again happens a lot in that transition to parenthood of having parents healing from childhood trauma because they are more aware of how it's impacted them, and they don't want to parent how their parents parented.
I
And
see.
so, yeah. And so, as that healing is happening, they're now setting boundaries with the people in their lives and having more intentional relationships and aware of like how they're parenting. Um, and so then they're going to connect with people, like they're going to find their people because they're more aware of how detrimental it was in their own childhood, um, for the lack of capacity or the choices that their own parents made.
It's pretty wild stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool to watch, and it's like an honor to witness it.
All right, moving on to our third segment. Wrote another article, The Mask We Wear, Motherhood and the Art of Holding It Together, but Not Really. So my first question, as I read this great piece, very informative. You write about the invisible mask that parents wear and why some signs that, someone is making their emotions, and how can they begin to drop that mask?
Um, well, I think safety is important, right? Um, Validation for why it's there in the first place. So connecting the parents with other parents that can relate. Um, and so whether that's through a therapist or there's a lot of really great like mom groups, parenting groups, um, giving that safe space of like, hey, you know what? It's okay to say you didn't do the dishes yesterday because the people around you aren't going to judge you. And if they do, then they're not your people. Um, I will often share with moms that, when I do drop-ins on mom and baby groups, the moms that are the most put together have the most red flags for me because, when we talk about masks, you, you're showing up on the outside how you're probably not feeling on the inside. And sometimes it's easier to put makeup on than to talk about how you're feeling. Um, so creating spaces and finding spaces where you feel safe and validated, and like the norm is not Instagram or Pinterest. It's real life. Um, I think that's really important because there's a really high burden on like being the perfect mom. Like I see so many clients where perfectionism is something they've lived with their whole lives and they've mustered to get through with this mask, but now that mask is really heavy, and it's not possible to keep it on anymore because there's too many things going on.
I'm glad that you said that, because a great segue for a question I had later, but I'm going to talk about it now because we are talking about it, and that's the comparison trap is brutal, especially in the age of social media. So how do you help clients shift their focus back, to their own values and realities?
Definitely, I would say clients bring it up faster than I do. Get them off social media or putting limits. I'll say like if you're looking at a post and you're not feeling good, unfollow or mute that person. Because like you don't have to follow anybody. There's no requirement. Um, I would also say that it's important to like pay attention to those things. So what is it about, what you saw or who you interacted with that you felt something was activated inside of you. Like, what bothered you about it? Um, is it like you're feeling like you're not good enough? Because what are the where's the evidence? Um, there's a couple exercises that I'll do with clients where you like make a list. What is a good mom? Like, let's just make a list and we'll write it out, or I'll have them write it.
That's really
What's a
cool.
what's a good mom? Okay, how many of those things are you doing? And usually it's all, right? Like, a good mom makes sure their baby's fed. A good mom makes sure their house is safe. A good mom makes sure their diapers change. Like, it's rare that they will say something that they completely are disconnected from. There are things that come up, and then it's like, well, how do you handle that situation? Oh, I do this instead. Okay, so should we add that to the other list? So that's pretty tangible. Like, that can be really helpful. I also love getting clients to do the VIA character strengths assessment. It's free online. It takes 15-20 minutes. And then it ranks your character strengths and your values from, I think it's 1 to 25. I do it every couple of years myself, just because it's really cool to see how our values and our focuses change. And so I'll say, like, let's look at your top 5 or 6 and how do they play a role in your life? Like, your life for you, what's important to you? And then, like, can you get your partner to do that? And where do they line up? Like, oh, my partner, really values, I'm trying to think of some, like, judgment. Judgment is something that my partner holds really high, but it ranked really low for me. Okay, so when it comes to a situation where you're talking about something and you disagree, can you bring that up and say, I don't actually really care. Or I care, but it doesn't make a difference to me in my life, where your partner's like, no, I need to know, like, what's going on here. I know for me, something that usually is in my like top 6 is creativity. So if I don't have some sort of creative outlet in my life, I'm just not feeling as fulfilled and I'm feeling more disconnected. So, um, like, personalizing it. I know you're talking about, like, how do we not compare? Well, part of not comparing is feeling more entrenched in ourselves, right? Like, finding your authentic self means you're not going to be as um, susceptible to comparison.
Definitely want to take that test because now I'm curious about
Do it.
myself and what I rank on that. That'd be cool. I just run over to Julie and be like, "Hey, babe, can you
Yeah.
do this? Like, let's see." Just quick side note: we have a poet laureate who's gonna do a poet for our wedding, so she sent like a questionnaire to us, the same questions. And then once she wrote it, we loved the poem, and then we went back to each other and read our answers back. We wrote like the same exact thing,
Oh, no
exactly
way.
back to each other. Yeah, it's just crazy. So now I'm curious. I'm like, oh, I want to go do one of Amber's tests that she told me to
Yeah,
go do. I'm gonna run to Julie. Like, can you do this too? I want to see if we're the same.
totally. Via character strengths, VIA. Don't have to do the paid version. Do the free version. But
Very
that's
cool.
really cool too. Like, I love, like, curiosity in your relationship, right? Like, what's coming up for us, and having those conversations. It's
Super
great.
cool. I'll tell you, Amber, I'm learning a lot. I definitely know the listeners are as well too. Whether you are parents or about to become a parent, keep staying in tune here because we're delivering the gold today. Okay, emotional numbness is a major red flag that you mentioned. Uh, why does that happen, and what are early steps towards emotional reconnection?
Mm. So it happens for various reasons, I will say. Most often, I see it happening to somebody who, um, in childhood, usually, like at some point in their life, they were told that their emotions were not important. Um, I cannot feel safe being emotional, dismissed. Um, that's more of like a trauma lens for sure, but I think that's important. Like, thinking about, like, how how did my parents talk about emotions when I was crying? How did they respond? Like, the common you hear, like, I'll give you something to cry about. Like, how dismissive is that? Like,
Right.
you have a right to feel how you're feeling. So, over time, we develop like walls. Like, it's not safe to have emotions. I can't I can't stand it. There's also that physiological response that goes with emotions. And a lot of people don't feel safe or are really uncomfortable or distressed by the physical sensations that go with emotions, especially anxiety and anger, I'd say. So um, sometimes I see people that experience panic attacks. And then when we kind of talk about it, I'm like, do you ever feel worried or like concerned? Oh no, like I'm anxious. Like it's it's up here. It's not down here. And so it's like, okay, can we bring that back in where you can feel okay with feeling worried or concerned or even mild anxiety? Like, oh, there goes my mic. um, like when your heart starts racing or you start sweating or you notice a change in your breath in a situation, it doesn't have to be, oh my god, what's happening. It can be like, oh, okay, my body's trying to tell me something. So retraining that mind body connection, to feel safe feeling emotions. um, for people that have panic or are more blunted in emotion, sometimes I'll talk to them about, when you're worried about something, or like when you feel panic coming, can you do squats, or can you run up and down your stairs, like assuming that's within their healthy body scope, because it's not within my scope to give them exercise plans. But um, I want you to retrain your brain to be okay feeling these symptoms, because anxious symptoms and exercise side effects are the same. Right? So if you can like go for a run on your treadmill and be like, yeah, no, I'm fine because I know I'm supposed to have my heart rate increase and be out of breath. Okay. So now when you're worrying, can you be like, oh, okay, my body's trying to tell me something. It doesn't mean it's horrible, right? It's a message. It's a different form of a message. So reconnecting that way. Some people don't have the language around emotions. And I will say that's not sexist, but men tend to have less language around emotion, just probably the way their like childhood. So I have like an emotions wheel I'll show, or like a list of emotions. Like, does any of these stand out? And how you might be feeling, and maybe doing some homework around, like um, when something happens, I want you to look at the list. How are you feeling? And we start tracking it. Um, so just like bringing emotion is as like it's safe to feel these things. And sometimes it's, having your therapist name, oh, it sounds like you're feeling this. And it's pretty cool because even when people don't have that like mind body connection to their emotions, they're bang on when they're to say to me like, no, that's not it. They know. Like, even if you don't know, you know. Um, so then we explore that further. Um, yeah, so I mean, therapy should be, ideally, it is a safe place to feel emotions. I see a lot of tears. We go through a lot of Kleenex, um, but there's other emotions that come up too. I mean, I get I get excited when I hear anger. Um, Not always, but when the emotion has been anxiety and now it's anger, and processing, like, what does that mean for you? Um, I mean, I could talk about that a lot more in depth, but I think that probably answers at least a bit of the question.
Yeah, I mean, it unlocks doors, right? It unlocks more doors to understand. Oh, really, I was actually feeling this, not necessarily this, because that now made me kind of confront really what the issue is, so that I can then properly digest that, express it, and then compartmentalize it, and so that I know how to, act with that in the future. And now I know what these feelings are the next time this happens, like you were talking about the exercise thing.
Yeah, for sure. And one other thing quickly, sometimes people are unable to experience emotions because they're flooded. And so their mind is saying, I can't handle this. So it just like shuts off. And so paying attention to that as well, because if that's happening frequently or over a period of time, like that would be something I'd recommend you talk to your healthcare provider about. It can also happen to people that start on new medication. So again, just trust your intuition of your body. And if you're like, this doesn't seem right, then definitely talk to someone.
So I found this to be a pretty cool. You were talking about the CEO of the home. I thought that was pretty cool. You described the emotional well-being as part of that, of being the CEO in the home. What does reclaiming the role look like, especially in overwhelmed parents?
It looks like feeling in control, like you're able to stop the hamster wheel, right? I think life, we all at some point or just feel like we're like, get up, do the stuff, go to bed, get up. And so like what would it look like if you were able to hit pause?
I think
What would
people understand the hamster wheel thing.
yeah.
Most people.
That's yeah, for sure. And we just get like stuck in old habits or comfort zones. And like what would it look like if we hit pause? And next week you got to start different, right? Solution focused therapy would say like, if a miracle happened, what would we see different? Um, in terms of like being the CEO of your home, like I think we get caught up in feeling like we don't have any control. So it might even be writing out, what do I have control of and what do I not have control over? I don't have control over the times school starts and finishes with my kids, right? I don't have control over when the bus times are. I have control over what I put in their lunches. I have control over if they're signed up for extracurriculars. It's not a have to. It's a like what works for you and your family. Um, to some extent, you might have control over how many kids you have, although that's not always the case either. um, or who takes on what roles in the home. And again, it's like, let's not get stuck on the hamster wheel of like, this is what we've been doing, so this is what we're going to keep doing. So that's something I definitely encourage my clients when it comes to this, like reclaiming your role of, okay, pre-pregnancy, who took care of what roles in the home is not going to be the same as, end stage pregnancy or postpartum or when you return to work. Like those are all completely different phases in your family cycle.
Right.
So it makes sense to have conversations with your partner, and you don't have to sit down and be like, okay, who's doing what? Although some people do. Um, it can just be like, hey, I'm, feeling overwhelmed with this thing. Can you take it on? And never being afraid to ask. I would hope you're not afraid to ask your partner, especially if it comes to like needing help and also dispersing the roles in the home, right? Like delegating. um, like if by asking your partner to do X, you can focus more on Y, and then everybody
Wins.
benefits. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, why would that be something we're afraid of? But I hear it so often, and I can say I've experienced it myself. But then it's like, hey, wait a second, this isn't helping anybody, right? Um, there's lots of different methods of going at it, but I encourage couples for sure, like regularly reassess, like, does our pattern work for us?
Yeah. No, that's some great insight. You emphasize small wins. I'm a big fan of small wins and that analogy, and how someone can implement that into their life when it comes to what we're talking about. Why is this practice so transformational for people like stuck in perfectionism or self-criticism?
In terms of the small wins.
The small wins, celebrating the
Yeah.
small wins.
Yeah. Um, there's discomfort in change. And for humans, we don't like change. And so having celebrating the small wins gives us opportunity to shift what our norm is, right? So doing something small and creating joy around that, or creating reward, then we're more likely to do it, or even to like push ourselves out of our comfort zone in general. I think there's also like going back to the hamster wheel. When you're just stuck on it and life is just rolling, we tend to not feel as fulfilled. So if we pause and celebrate the small wins, then we don't feel as stuck, right? We feel more in control, and we are able to find more fulfillment and joy. Um, I think it's also good modeling for our kids. I think like there was a time where that pendulum swung really far the other way,
Yeah.
where we were celebrating everything, but um, for our kids to see that like joy can be found in small things. It doesn't have to involve spending a ton of money or, you know, be disrupting our lives.
Could you give us maybe 2 examples of maybe what like a small win would look like, just so that the listeners have a little something to go off of?
Small win might be getting your kid to fall asleep before 8. We're talking about, yeah. I think that, I mean, I love when I'm working with moms and they're like, oh my gosh, Amber, my baby went to sleep at like 7 o'clock last night and I had like 3 hours. I could do whatever I wanted. Like, let's celebrate that. um, or, you know, getting out of the house without, um, spit up or like a child's handprint on your clothes when you're heading into the office. Those could be small wins. Um, Having 5 minutes or 10 minutes with your partner uninterrupted, where no one's yelling mom or dad. Um, or maybe it's like getting all the dishes done and and the kitchen looks clean for more than an hour. Um, yeah, so there's lots of things that we we could easily walk past. But give yourself permission to feel good when good things happen.
Love it. Love it. Okay, our last segment, an article you wrote, Parenting by Instinct, How Emotional Awareness Guides Your Best Decisions. My first question after reading that I wanted to ask you on this was that you present emotional awareness as a parenting superpower. And how can parents begin developing this skill without judgment?
Definitely ties into a lot of what we've talked about today around recognizing your emotions, right? Like paying attention to how you actually feel and allowing that. Especially for a lot of parents that, you know, again, in childhood weren't given that opportunity or that, I don't want to say privilege, but sometimes it is a privilege of recognizing your emotions. Um, so this superpower can definitely come up from like allowing space for your own emotions, naming your emotions, naming your kids' emotions. I definitely have a reaction when parents are like, "Oh, I can't, you know, I can't be angry around my kid. I can't yell around my kid." Or what if they see me cry? And I'm like, "What if they know you're human?" Right? So, like, how do our kids learn about emotions and being human and compassion if they're shielded from emotion? So, I think that can definitely help in terms of having that emotional intelligence and connecting to how you're feeling. Um, I love a daily check-in. I use it myself usually when I'm driving because that's my quiet time. But like, how am I feeling? What's going on for me right now? You know, I'm feeling a little anxious maybe. Why could that be? And then like, what's going on in my life and being more connected to yourself and your emotions because then you're going to be more aware of if something's not quite right. And I think in the article, like I talk about how, like, if there's something going on in your family's life and you're just feeling uneasy about it, like, let's lean into that. Why? What's going on? And maybe it's like you're trying not to ruffle feathers or, you know, keep things going smoothly by just agreeing with what all the other parents are saying or what the teacher said, but you just don't actually feel okay with it. So,
Right.
is there something you could say or do?
Let's talk about gut instinct because it's often undervalued. Can you share with us and our listeners like what does it look like when parents start trusting it again?
Um, I mean, there's gonna be um, more assertiveness, like communication changes. I mean, I want to get away from the jargon, but communication changes when you're trusting your gut. Um, there's less avoidance. Things are gonna like you're gonna address things as they come up. It's not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened a week ago. I was at baby group and so said this and I disagreed. It's, you know, I heard her say that and I spoke up, or I chose my battle and like was like, you know what, like this isn't that important and moved on, because it's not always about speaking up. Um, it's letting it go. That's important too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so trusting your gut is just listening to discomfort when it comes up, and also noticing themes, which again, therapy can be great for that because you don't have to do the work. Your therapist is actually doing the work around the themes of like, this is the third time you've mentioned you've gone to your in-laws and came home crying, you know. Um, so trusting your gut around like this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel like me. And sometimes, if you've had that disconnection, sometimes like a gut response can come up as like needing to go to the bathroom more often or like having a headache. Like our bodies are pretty cool, annoying sometimes, but pretty cool in that like they really try to send us messages.
It's just knowing how to recognize them, and the gut's a pretty powerful one. It's not
Yeah.
often wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes we project our fear onto our kids. How can parents, separate their own emotional triggers from their child's needs?
That's an intense question. I mean, it takes a process sometimes, but it can also be something as simple as, maybe you fell out of a tree, climbing a tree as a kid, and now you're like afraid of letting your kids climb trees. So, can you take a breath and recognize not all kids fall out of trees? um, or how do you communicate that to your kids around like, oh, I know firsthand, like I broke my arm, so let's make sure you're careful doing this, right? Those types of things. Like, are there things that your kids want to do or opportunities that come up that you're really quick to say no? um, and then reflect back that, oh, that was my inner child, or that was me saying no for me, but it's not necessarily no for them. um,
Yeah, certainly. As long as it's like something safe for the kids, the child is not doing anything or they're not in immediate danger. We also don't want to deprive them of maybe an experience like going into a treehouse, for example.
yeah.
If the parent fell out of the treehouse and then projecting that fear. I love how eloquently you express that, because I'm sitting here. I'm sure people listening are sitting there going like, "Oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense the way you put that." But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to deprive my child of having an experience and going up and hanging out in a tree for it. Obviously, we want to put things in place to make sure that they're safe, but that's an important thing to be able to understand and regulate for yourself as a human being, to say, well, hang on, yeah, no, that is me. And, being able to now adjust to go about it the right way so that we aren't, depriving, children of potentially having like a really, really cool experience, especially when it comes to tree forts.
Yes, for sure. And I also see it a lot when it comes to like trying foods.
Oh, that's
Having
a
a
good one.
fear of your child choking is like real. Okay, so take a first aid course. Definitely recommend that to all parents. But also like you cut the food up small or you purate it. Like they're gonna be okay. Like you're not gonna leave them by themselves. Please don't. But like, can you trust that you're doing the things to protect them? I would also say like, when you have young kids, you can call 911 for absolutely anything and nobody's going to judge you. So, um, I'm not saying do really super risky things. However, recognizing that you're not alone, and like, I know for a lot of parents that can sometimes ease the pressure. Like knowing that you can call, the firefighters will come, and it's going to be okay. Um, so just like, what are the things you're avoiding that? Like realistically, you're probably not going to have to call 911, but um, and allergies, food allergies. I have lots of parents will say, you know what? If you have a peanut allergy in your family, then how about you go to the RVH parking lot and that's where you try peanut butter with your kid. That's okay. You're allowed to do that. And some do. And that's okay. No judgment. So there's lots of things where like fear can get in the way of your kids doing things. I mean, there's bigger things as well. Like we could talk about intrusive thoughts are thoughts that just come into your head. Your brain like makes up bad scenarios that are really scary. So like if you're finding that you haven't left the house, or someone that doesn't go out much because they're afraid something bad's going to happen, like that could be a disorder. There's also very tried and true treatments to help with that. Um, so there's a spectrum of how that can show up.
Love it. Love learning new things. Thoroughly enjoying myself over here, learning about all of this stuff. I find it somewhat fascinating, and I know you're super passionate about it. So super happy we had the opportunity to be able to do this. I do have one question left before we wrap up. In your article, I really like this. Your idea of shimmer and shadow moments. I found it to be so fresh. Before I ask the question, would you mind sharing, just so that the audience understands the difference between a shimmer and a shadow, and then follow that up with, my question would be, how can families use this as a daily ritual to build connection?
Okay, so an example of a shimmer and a shadow, or
Yeah, just so obviously they know
yeah,
what a shimmer and a shadow
yeah,
is, and how can we, use this as a daily ritual for families so that
yeah.
we build that connection.
For sure. And you know what? I first was exposed to this as a technique when I was in grad school. We took a course, and I can't remember specifics, but anyway, and we had to watch a movie with Bruce Willis. And I wish I could remember the title because I know you're a movie buff. Anyway, he's in a movie and they do highs and lows. And so I like shimmers and shadows. You can do highs and lows, but a shimmer is like, what is shiny? What's the shiniest part of your day? What are you drawn to think about that makes you smile? Where's your joy, um, your shimmer in the day? And so that could be like, oh, I was really excited I ran into an old friend, or I booked the trip I've been putting off, and that's my shimmer. I get my kids to do this, and their shimmer might be, um, you know, I got to eat ice cream. It's often around food. Then the flip side would be the shadow is like,
Okay.
what's the dark part? What's the part that's like you want to go away, you want to hide, the low, um, and that can be like, I didn't want to get out of bed this morning. I hear that from my 8-year-old. Or it could be, I had to make a phone call I'd been putting off. I had to pay my taxes. um, if you're talking with your kids, it might be something more relatable for them, where like my shadow was having to clean out the barn. We live on a farm, so shadow might be more around something like that. Um, and so we know that it's important. There is evidence around having dinner together as a family. There is a lot of benefit to that. I know it's not possible for everyone, but if you can sit down at a table together, eye contact is important, um, for kids learning that with food. Um, and then go around the table, like share your shimmers and your shadows. What was the highs and the lows for everybody? You can learn a lot about each other and feel connected, and also feeling heard, right? Like, oh, I'm hearing that like the best part of your day is the ice cream that we haven't had yet. If you're doing it at the dinner table, sometimes I do it at bedtime. Um, so just opportunity for everybody to have their own perspective of what the good and the bad parts of the day were. You can also get a lot of information from the people in your family as well, of like patterns. Like, I've noticed that your shadow lately has been, going to the gym. Like maybe you want to put your membership on hold and like take up pickleball or something like that. Like there might be themes that come out, which again like helps you to connect with each other. So it's pretty simple, and I think that it can be fun. So I would encourage everyone to try it.
Wonderful. That was a lot of fun, very informative. I learned a lot of things. I'm sure our listeners did as well. And I certainly believe that there's definitely going to be some people that want more information. They want to learn a little bit more about the topic of discussion, about postpartum parenting. What does it all mean? How do I navigate these complexities to try to enjoy the best part of life's moments and what it brings to the table? And so for those who want to reach out, maybe learn a little bit more information, what would be one of the best ways that they can go ahead and reach you, and for resources, because I know you have a bunch of them?
We definitely have a lot of resources. So I would point you to our website, which is actually my name. So amber.sperling.ca. We have some free downloadable resources. Grab those for sure. You can also email info@ambersperling.ca and we will connect you. We are on social media, so you can look me up on there and always sharing tips, want to add value to your lives. Reach out if you have questions or you want to be connected to resources. It doesn't have to be to book a therapy session. We're here to help, and I have interns on my team that offer affordable or no fee therapy as well, because everybody, especially in that postpartum period, which technically goes up to 1 year, but we go beyond, everybody deserves to have support. So feel free to reach out, even if you don't know why you're reaching out. You just are curious and recognize that you need something. You might not know what that is. So we're here for that.
Love it. One of the best here in Simcoe County. Phenomenal time together. Really, really enjoyed that, and very much looking forward for the opportunity to do the next one. Stick around. We'll see you on the other side.
Thanks, Sean. This was great.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpwithjeffandsean.com. That's gnpwithjeffandsean.com or call 705-413-3775.